The leak didn't come from the palace. It wasn't a disgruntled aide or a former royal staffer. It originated from an unexpected place, a licensed trauma therapist. And what emerged shook public perception of Meghan Markle to its core. On the morning of July 20th, 2025, an encrypted MI6 document surfaced in a classified internal channel. This wasn't part of any covert operation or intelligence probe. It was a disturbing, psychological profile derived from anonymized therapy. Notes submitted due to growing safety concerns. The notes detailed sessions spanning nearly 3 years, describing Meghan's internal struggles, patterns of thought, and recurring emotional fixations. A particular line was highlighted in red by MI6 analysts. She said it again last week. "If Kate keeps rising, I'll never be free. I need her gone in every way." That single quote triggered immediate escalation. This wasn't framed as royal rivalry, it was flagged as a dangerous obsession. What followed were over a dozen pages detailing recurring emotional cycles, resentment over Princess Diana comparisons, fixation on Kate's public favorability, and anxiety over Prince William's global influence. One statement stood out. Meghan allegedly said, "If Harry doesn't win the power narrative, I lose who I am." MI6 interpreted this not as a political issue, but an identity crisis spiraling toward destructive intent. According to the internal report, Kate was framed in Meghan's psyche as a threat to personal control and media dominance. The language analysts noted reflected psychological displacement, with repeated suggestions of attempts to discredit and outmaneuver Kate in the public sphere. Back in London, high-level briefings occurred. The palace was informed behind closed doors, but no formal statement was released. What the public didn't know was how seriously the situation was being treated. The whistleblower wasn't a journalist or a media mole. She was a former MI6 linguist, now working in civilian cybersecurity, who had been part of the document analysis team. During her review, she took a screenshot of a chilling phrase, circled in blue. "The only way to keep her brand untouchable is to make Kate untouchable. By force, if needed." Though no physical threat was mentioned, the context raised red flags. The intent, according to MI6 interpretation, was not passive. It carried direction and planning. Clive Burns, a former BBC investigative producer, received the screenshot from the whistleblower and recognized its gravity. "This wasn't about headlines. It went far beyond politics," he said. At that point, the information had already spread far beyond the original source. A trusted insider close to Kensington Palace confirmed that Kate had been briefed and was visibly shaken by the content. A prominent royal commentator, Lady Evelyn Bram, appeared on LBC Radio and delivered a stark statement. "This isn't Meghan versus Kate anymore. It's Meghan versus the consequences." That quote circulated widely online, gaining traction. In another appearance, she added, "When a woman says another woman needs to be gone, we're no longer talking about rivalry, we're talking about responsibility. And silence becomes complicity." More entries from the therapists. Logs surfaced. The language grew darker. In an April 2025 session, Meghan reportedly said, "They want her to be queen one day. That can't happen. She becomes untouchable, I become disposable." MI6 analysts highlighted the repetition of the word untouchable, which appeared in 5 separate logs. Kate, they observed, had evolved in Meghan's mind into a symbol, not just of competition, but of something she couldn't influence or control. The deeper concern wasn't the emotional volatility, it was the presence of strategy. Meghan had allegedly rehearsed future media responses in therapy, preparing herself for a public fallout long before any scandal broke. One therapist's note from March 4th, 2025 read, "Client practiced lines for interview. I was just protecting my mental health." Alternate line, "Some people just couldn't stand seeing me happy." What stunned the MI6 reviewers was the timing. No scandal had occurred yet. This was not response. It was anticipation. Dr. Cynthia Harold, a trauma expert in the UK, weighed in. When someone preps for betrayal exposure months before anything happens, it's not a reaction. It's premeditated spin. Then came the log entry that turned this psychological review from a warning into something far more serious. What began as a clinical concern quietly escalated to a matter of national security. On May 8, 2025, Meghan reportedly told her therapist, "There are ways to make someone break without ever touching them. All it takes is atmosphere immerse, pressure points, silence where it matters." That chilling line was flagged immediately, not just because of its content, but because it mirrored digital activity already under MI6 surveillance, cyber intelligence unit had been tracing. Coordinated smear campaigns, online posts that critiqued Kate's parenting, her demeanor, even her accent. No concrete link had been confirmed. The alignment was too close to ignore. MI6's internal memo from May labeled it plainly. Subject displays understanding of narrative attrition techniques and indirect reputational dismantling. Within days, whispers began to surface in Parliament. This wasn't about a therapist breaching confidentiality. It was about defining the limits of privacy. When national figures and public trust are at stake, former Deputy Commissioner for Ethical Justice, Dame Harriet Messon, offered a searing observation. If therapy becomes a sanctuary for power plays, we're not discussing mental health anymore. We're discussing weaponized strategy. Within MI6, the leak forced a deeper probe. Legal pressure mounted to access full context from Meghan's therapist. The reason? The scope of what had been uncovered was growing rapidly, and Kate, by all accounts, remained unaware of the scale. According to a confidential Palisade memo dated June 29, 2025, the princess believed the silence was emotional distance. She never realized it was orchestrated. For years, Kate had disengaged from drama. She avoided retaliation, social media, gossip. She focused on family and duty. But Meghan, as interpreted from therapy records, saw that silence differently. She thinks silence makes her sacred. How do you fight someone who pretends not to fight? That line reportedly echoed across multiple sessions, struck a nerve with royal ethics observers. For Meghan, Kate's silence wasn't apathy, it was a kind of soft power. And the goal, it appeared, was to dismantle it subtly, consistently, permanently. Even more alarming were revelations about long-term strategy. In one therapist note from February 12, 2025, Meghan is quoted as saying, "Once America loves me, the UK will follow. They'll rewrite the narrative, and she'll be the bitter one." This wasn't about simply elevating her own image. It was about re-engineering perception by systematically dimming Kate's light. A fake quote flagged in MI6's February files read, "Client exhibits fixation on cultural legacy control. Perceives Catherine as obstacle to her narrative being fully realized." Inside MI6, a covert team under Project Sapphire, a cyber initiative focused on hostile influence detection, began reviewing public content trends. The findings were disturbing. Several high-traffic gossip accounts using identical phrases found in the therapy notes, including the label, "I stall Queen," were now flagged. Coincidence was no longer plausible. There was orchestration. There were receipts in one rapid chain of events. 3 of the largest anti-Kate accounts went dark after direct MI6 contact. Royal watchers noticed. Behind palace walls, Prince William was privately briefed not by aides, but by MI6 officials. His response, though firm, reflected rising frustration. "This isn't about royalty. If mental health is used to target my wife, that's not scandal, it's crime." A fake but symbolic quote attributed to William in a classified report from July 10, 2025, reads, "If this keeps going, silence won't be an option, not for me." The dynamic had shifted. Until that point, most leaks revolved around written, therapist notes. But everything changed on July 9, 2025. A sealed diplomatic case arrived in London from California. Inside were audio recordings, backup session tapes, archived legally, but rarely accessed. What they contained was worse than imagined. One file captured Meghan saying, "If Harry still had his family, I wouldn't need to protect us like this. I'm not hurting Kate, I'm surviving her." The tone was fragile, reactive, emotionally charged, but always framed as defense, never intent. Another file dated May 2, 2025, revealed a line that jolted investigators. They made her untouchable. "By hiding her flaws, I'll make her touchable again with 1,000 cuts." It was no longer speculation. These were words recorded in her own voice. According to MI6, if these tapes were verified, it could prompt a parliamentary review on whether personal privacy can override potential threat to national image.uk. SecurityWire released a statement confirming possession of the files. Behind the scenes, officials began preparing for a new phase of reckoning. The story had gone from personal to political, from private therapy to public danger. What began as therapy notes escalated into a national security crisis. Advanced voice matching software, corroborated by 2 independent linguistics labs, confirmed a 99.7% vocal match between the tapes and Meghan Markle's verified interviews. Soon, blurred whispers in Parliament became scheduled hearings. An anonymous MP told The Guardian, "If it were any other public figure, we'd call it coordinated defamation. But because it's the royals, no one dares say it. Even Meghan's." Former friends began distancing themselves. One insider told a New York journalist, "Her comments about Kate always felt competitive, but this is something darker. It wasn't truth anymore. It was survival at all costs." MI6 has flagged another repeated phrase across 3 tapes: "Break the myth, and the crown falls with it." Analysts interpreted it as ideological sabotage, a theory of replacing Kate's public image to elevate Meghan's narrative. This wasn't defamation, it was strategy. The therapist, still protected legally, initially upheld confidentiality, but on July 6, 2025, in a meeting with MI6 legal counsel, she submitted a written declaration. The sessions had stopped feeling therapeutic and began resembling strategic conditioning. "This isn't therapy, it's a scripted playbook," she wrote. She admitted ignoring Meghan's language at first, seeing it as emotional venting. But as social campaigns echoed the therapy script, concern grew especially after her June 3rd note: "If Kate doesn't collapse, we'll help gravity along." MI6 cross-referenced this with intel pointing to a small media firm contracted for digital narrative shaping, Project Sapphire. MI6's covert cyber division tracked coordinated accounts mirroring the same phrasing, glossing Kate as the ice doll queen, Dway. 3 of the most influential anti-Kate accounts were deleted after MI6 action. William was briefed privately, not by the palace, but by MI6. A leaked quote from a classified reading: "If mental health is weaponized to degrade, my wife, that's not royal business, that's criminal." The confrontation had begun. On July 9, 2025, an anonymous courier delivered backup therapy tapes to London. "These recordings were chilling," Meghan said. "If Harry still stood by us, I wouldn't have to guard against her. I'm not attacking. K-time, protecting myself." Another snippet from May 2nd. "They made her untouchable. I'll tear her down with 1,000 cuts." Talk shifted from speculation to audio evidence.uk. SecurityWire confirmed possession of the files. MI6 prepared for a broader inquiry. The tape transcripts were handed to a closed parliamentary committee. Operation Whistle Crown was born. MP described the findings in stark terms: therapy turned operation. Obsession disguised as self-care. Kate, now fully briefed, remained silent in public. A close associate later whispered to The Times that she felt betrayed, not by a stranger, but by someone who smiled while dreaming of her ruin. MI6 offered enhanced security protocols, which she accepted. Quietly tweaking every routine, Harry was deliberately kept from full access. MI6 warned that any breach risked narrative damage, prince or not. And internally, officials debated whether the therapist should have escalated sooner. She had answers, but no one listened until it was too late. By parliamentary deliberations, a sobering truth emerged. Meghan's therapy notes and audio all centered on Kate not as rival, but as obstacle. In one final entry dated July 1st, Meghan allegedly said, "She needn't fall publicly. She just has to be questioned privately until her name makes people flinch." That line reverberated through Westminster, and then came Kate's symbolic statement. At a children's charity event on July 9th, she held the power of stillness. Asked how she felt, she replied, "Sometimes silence speaks loudest." It was regal, deliberate, powerful, a quiet rebuke. Meanwhile, Meghan's presence retreated, appearances canceled, podcasts delayed, PR in retreat, brand in crisis. Behind the storm, the therapist vanished under protection. Her final words echoed, "I'm not proud it took this long, because what she uncovered wasn't therapy gone wrong. It was obsession planning a narrative coup. And that narrative didn't leak, erupted, and everyone heard it."